this book lesson, we're going to be creating a menu cover. You should have downloaded the Lesson 12 book files, and you can get started by double-clicking on the Start InDesign file. Now, when you do open it up, it looks like a blank document, but that's okay. If you check out our Layers panel, you can see there's a variety of different layers that we're going to turn on as we need. The first thing we need to do is to resave this as Menu. So we'll go to File and do a Save As. And let's rename this as the Menu. Oops. Hit Save. The first thing we need to do is to make sure your Layers panel is open. With it open, you can always click on the edges and sides so that we can see all the different layers. And we want to make sure we've got our background layer selected. This layer is visible, it's unlocked, and it allows us to make edits that we're currently drawing on. With this layer selected, let's place a graphic. File and Place. Let's go to the Lesson 12 folder and locate this background TIFF. Now, this TIFF file is natively a grayscale image. So I'm going to place it by clicking on the upper left-hand corner of our document, just outside the edges of it, and this will fill out the entire frame. Now, one of the unique properties of having a grayscale image is that you can change the colors within the image itself. And there's two ways we can do it. First of all, I've got my selection tool, and I'm clicking just on the frame itself, not the content grabber, but the actual box that it's in. If we were to open up the swatches panel, either one up at the top or on the side, make sure the foreground color is selected, and we want to set the foreground color to be the green brightest. Notice that when it does this, everything that's white is turned into that bright green with any tints or shades that are within that as grayscale. Now, even with it selected, we can bump down the tint of this. We'll bump it down to say 80% to knock it down a bit more. If we want to affect the dark values or the black values inside this image, carefully click on the content grabber, and this selects the picture. The picture itself, you can see, has a fill color value of black, and let's set this one to be green dark. As with the other ones, let's set a tint value to be 73%, and that'll knock down the value of it as well. The main thing to remember when working with this particular method is that it's a grayscale image. This can be a TIFF, a JPEG, a Photoshop document. All of those work really well. And then whether you're selecting the container, the frame, and changing its color, or you're clicking on the image and changing its color to something like this as well. With this done, let's go back up to our Layers panel. We can lock down the background layer. And let's turn on Art Layer 1 by clicking on its eyeball icon and unlocking this layer so we can work on it. Choose your selection tool and click once on the red circle in the middle of your document. We want to open up the Effects panel for this design. There's a couple of places you can find effects. I always like to go up to the Effects up here, or if you wanted to open the panel itself, you can go down to Window and open the Effects and have them always open on this side. We'll drag it up here so we can see everything. With the red circle selected, notice that the object entirely is set at 100% normal blending mode. If we wanted to drop the opacity of this down to something like 70%, we can click on the arrow and drag the slider down till it gets about 70% here. The opacity lets it blend and see through that object, so no, it's no longer 100% seeing that red, you're seeing some of the colors behind it. Alternatively, you can choose the half circle that's blue at the top. Rather than using the slider, if you wanted to type in 50% and hit return, that'll also knock it down to be 50% opaque. A final place you can also adjust the opacity of something at the object level is if we select the green circle, you can find the opacity in your control panel or in your properties panel. From here, let's set the green circle to be 60%. And it drops it down to that. Beyond changing the opacity of things, you can also change their blending mode. If we select our red circle again, rather than the pixels blending normally, choosing one of these modes allows them to multiply or divide or do different effects depending on which one you've selected. You can play around with each one of these. Let's do multiply for this one. You can see how it gets darker. If we choose overlay, it gets lighter. This depends on the colors that you're using, their values, and also the colors of all of the objects that are below it. We'll keep this one at overlay, and let's choose the green or the blue half circle and set that to be multiply. Let's apply these to some other graphics as well. I'm going to pull my effects over to this side so I can see it. We'll go to our layers panel, turn on layer 2 and unlock it so we can see those. And let's select the spiral that's on the left side, hold the shift key and select the spiral that's on the right side. With both of these selected, change your blending mode to be color dodge. You can see how this takes these dark graphics and brightens them up. Again, depending on the value and color that you're working on, you're going to get some different effects. Now, if we don't want this to be so stark, we can also drop the opacity down for it. So let's drop this down to be about 30%. Now, a final thing to note about using these effects, we've been applying them to the overall object, which means everything about whatever you've created, whether it's stroked or filled in, whether it has text or drop shadows, all of the entire object is getting that blending mode and opacity change. Let's select the circle in the middle that's got a stroke of purple going around it. If we wanted to change the blending mode of just the stroke, make sure you can open the object and click on the word stroke. We're going to change this blending mode to hard light, and you can see now how it only applies that change just to the stroke itself. Let's go over to our layers panel again. We'll lock down layers 1 and 2, and let's turn on visibility for art layer 3 and make sure to unlock it. We'll zoom in so we can see this a little bit better. This has a bitmapped image that goes around it, and just like the others, the bitmapped image is also just grayscale with black and white. One thing that makes bitmap images a little bit different is that they don't actually have tones of gray. Rather, you can see it has little dots that represent a stippled kind of effect that gives you the appearance of gray. With this image selected, let's drop the opacity down for it to be about 70%. Also, with the object selected, let's change the color of the black. So we want to click in the center of this to get the content of it, the actual picture of black pixels. We can open up our swatches panel, and let's change the black to be a dark red. Finally, we can go back to our effects panel, and let's change the blending mode for this one to be a screened value. So we can see the entire thing. Whoops, let's deselect it, so I'm back out. We'll go up to File and down to Place, and let's locate the garden, there it is, 12 glasses AI file. Hey, here's a handy trick. We want to open up the import options. If you don't have it selected, hold down the Shift key, and if you double click on it, this will open it up and open it up in the Import Options dialog box. Now, inside the General tab, we want to crop this image to the bounding box so that it stays just inside of the artwork that's here. If you cropped it to something else like the entire artboard or anything, it would get a larger area. So we just want the artwork for the bounding box. Also, make sure transparent background is turned on. This way, once it's placed, it's not going to give you a white background, but actually give you a none or no background at all. We can say OK. This will follow our cursor. With this, let's go over to this one on the right, and we'll click and drag and place this right inside of this circle, right in the center. Now, even though this has some transparency to it, you really get a sense that you can see through everything, and the amount of transparency it has when you turn off visibility for other layers. So right now, if I turned off visibility for Art 1 and 2, and even the background, you can see how bright they are. But when I turn back on all of those layers, how it blends in with this. To make it pop even more, let's set the opacity level for this to be 60%. And let's change the blending mode to it to be color burn. Now you can see how it gets rid of all the colors and makes them all nice and harmonized. With this done, let's go back up to our layers panel and lock down the Art Layer 3. Let's turn on visibility for our type layer and unlock it so we can work on type. When working with text effects, you can see that these effects can also be applied to many of the same things as well. In this case, if we chose Urban Oasis Gardens on the side, you can see one of the object effects that can be changed, in this case, is going to be the text layer. So with that selected and the text layer selected, let's change its blending mode to overlay, and let's drop its opacity down to be 70%. Now this really comes into play if you've got things like text and fill colors. I'm going to select this graphic at the very bottom, and if we drop the opacity of just the object itself and all the stuff inside of it, say down to 70%, you can see our text gets very gray as well as the background. And we want the text to actually remain very, very bright. So I'm going to undo that and bring it back up to 100%. This time, only choose the fill color, and let's drop the fill color down to 70%. This will keep the text nice and rich black while dropping the opacity and value of just the white filled in background. Here's another great tip. If you're ever zooming in and needing to zoom back out to quickly see everything, you can double click on the hand tool, and this will automatically fit your entire object or your entire page to your screen. With this done, let's go back up to our layers panel, lock down the type layer, and let's return to Art Layer 1 and unlock it. Some of the different effects that you can apply to objects allow you to take your special viewing modes and blending modes and transparency changes to the next level. One of the basic ones to do is to do a feathering effect. You can find a lot of these under the effects options. Effects can be found, again, either under the little FX here, and so these are all the different object effects that can be done. Inside the effects panel, you can find it with the effects down here. And also, if you go to the object drop-down menu, you can find the effects listed towards the middle. Right there we are, right here. One of the first effects that we want to apply is choosing this bright purple at the very top right-hand side. So with it selected, let's go up to Object, down to Effects, and let's do a basic feather. This is going to open up the Effects dialog box for that particular effect. Notice that it's checked off and it's also highlighted so you can see all the different options on the right-hand side. Now, if you've got Preview turned on, you can see these effects take effect whenever you type them in. Otherwise, you can play around with the different effects by clicking the up arrow. Let's set our feather width to be 0.3125, and we'll set both our choke and noise value to be 10%. We'll keep the corners to be diffused and say OK. We'll zoom back out by doing Command 0. Let's select this purple object that's on the right-hand side of the page, and I'll zoom over till we can see it. We want to use a gradient feather to gradiate out the transparency of it. So with it selected, let's go over to the Effects panel and click on the effects at the very bottom, and this time choose Gradient Feather. Do make sure that Preview is turned on and that you can see the gradient feather effects on the right-hand side. In order to edit this, the black gradient stop represents 100% opacity and the white gradient stop represents transparency. You can see how it goes from left to right, and it's reflected on the left and right of this object. If we want it to go the opposite direction, we can quickly click on this to reverse the gradient, and now it goes from right to left. We can say OK to this. Now this particular effect also has a tool that's associated with it. With that rectangle still selected, the gradient feather tool is located underneath the regular gradient tool. It has got the transparency to it. This allows you to click and drag on the image and actually dial in exactly where you want that feather to be. I'm going to click on this bottom left-hand corner and just drag up to be right about there. You can play around with how much or how little you want your gradient to be. I think this right about there looks pretty good. Now, probably the most common effect that's applied to an object is a drop shadow. Drop shadows give you the ability to add a quick little pop of contrast behind whatever you are working on. Let's go to our Layers panel and lock down Layer 1, and let's unlock the Type layer. Use your Selection tool, and let's click on the Editable Blossoms. With this selected, we can go up to our Effects panel up here, and we can choose Drop Shadow to open its options. From here, just like the others, you can make sure that Preview is turned on, and you can see all of the effects for the drop shadow that's been applied. Now, playing around with this can give you a lot of different varieties of things, but make sure the blending mode is set to multiply so that the color that's selected is blending in with whatever color is behind it. We're going to set the opacity to be 85%. Let's set an X and Y offset to be 0.06 for both the X and Y, 0.06. And let's set the size of this to be a little bit larger at 0.125. With all of this done, we can say OK. And you can see how that softens out the drop shadow. Let's go back up to our Layers panel and lock down Type now. Let's turn off visibility for Layer 3 so that we can see all of the other layers. We'll also unlock Art Layer 1. This will let us click on this bright green one that's at the top left-hand corner. With this object selected, let's go to our effects and let's apply a bevel and emboss to it. This effect gives whatever object you have a highlight side and also a shadow side. Now, depending on the settings for this, you can make it look more or less deep, but we're going to adjust this by setting the size of it to be 0.3125, so increase that. We'll set the softness to be 0.25, and let's set the depth of it to be about 60%. Right about there looks pretty good. Now it looks like a good soft inside edge with it. Now to make this show up even more, let's add another effect to it. Clicking on the word Outer Glow selects it and also brings up the objects or the options for this outer glow. Let's set the opacity blending mode for this to be multiply. We can change the opacity of it, now to be 80%. Let's set the size to be 0.25 and the spread for it to be 10%. Now you can see that we really can't see this effect take place. The reason for this is because we're multiplying a light color to it, and multiply gets rid of light colors. So let's select the color, and inside of our effects color, make sure you can see the swatches, and let's choose black as our color. Now you can see it adds a black outer glow to this effect. We'll say OK to this, and we'll also say OK to apply it to here. Now, if I wanted to be able to apply this effect quickly to another object, I can keep this object selected. Notice that I've got an FX beside the object that's here. I'm going to click on this FX and drag it onto this circle that's beside it. Very quickly, it applies all of those same effects to that particular object. Let's go back up to our Layers panel now and lock down Art Layer 1. Let's turn on visibility for Art Layer 3 and unlock it. Now on Layer 3 there's this little squash, so we want to zoom in so we can see it. This squash image is actually a Photoshop file that's got the drop shadow on one layer and the squash on its own layer. With it selected, let's go up to Edit and let's make a copy of it. And then one more time, we'll go up to Edit and let's choose Paste in Place to paste a copy of it directly in the same spot. So there's actually one right on top of the other. Now for now, I don't want to see this topmost version of it. I can go to my Layers panel and open up this layer and try to find that copy of the squash, but instead, I'm just going to have it selected. Go up to Object and tell it to hide that one. Now that topmost one that we had selected is completely hidden. Let's select this version of the squash, go up to Object, and let's open up the layer options for it. We want to turn off the foreground image so that we're only seeing the shadow, and we'll say OK to it. You can see that this shadow isn't blending in with any of the colors that are behind it. So we need to change its blending mode. With it selected, in the Effects panel, change its blending mode now to Multiply, and you can see how it shows up really nicely over the entire area. Now we can go back up to Object and choose Show All on Spread, and that will turn on the layer that's above it. Of course, for this new layer, one that's on top of everything, this shadow is blending on top of it. So let's turn off the shadow layer for that one. Under Object, choose Show Object Options. We'll turn off the shadow layer for this one, and we'll say OK. Now we need to select both of the two images. Whoops, give me a little glitch there. With them both on top of each other, you can click and drag, and that selects both of them. We'll go to Object, and let's group both of those together. Now with those grouped together, we can move it around and place it wherever we want to be able to work on it. In our case, let's unlock the type layer. With it selected, we can click on the solid blue and let's drag it up into the type layer. Now it's above the type, and you can see how this drop shadow is interacting nicely with the text that's on top of it. With this done, let's go up and let's unlock all of the layers now. I'll do Command 0 to zoom out, and I'm even going to close my layers, and we'll put my effects panel off to the side so I can see everything. If we go into preview mode by hitting W and deselecting everything, this will give us an idea of what everything looks like. Now, if you ever want to edit any of these particular effects, the fastest way to do it is by opening up your Properties panel. If you don't see it over to the side, make sure to go to Window and choose Properties. Whenever you click on an object, for instance, I'm going to click on this little gradient bar that's behind our words. You'll notice that the Effects panel is located here, and it shows you what effect is being applied to that particular object. You can click on the word for it, and it'll open up the options. Let's change this up. We want to set our dark slider to be closer to about 35%, so right about there. Looks good. And we can change its angle of attack from linear to radial. We can say OK to this. Also, if you ever need to quickly clear away any of the effects, you can select an object. In our case, let's select this little purple circle at the very bottom. Open up your Effects panel one more time, and then in the Options, choose Clear Effects. This will clear away whatever effect that has been applied inside of that area. With this done, we can save up our InDesign document